Thank you for joining us on this edition of The Insight. I am Babile Jonathan. Today, we are looking at the poor, difficult, and precarious working conditions of a significant proportion of the population of Cameroon. We are also looking at the management of political power and the management of public affairs in the country. And we are also looking at the struggle for change, the stumbling blocks to the struggle for change, notably in the management of the country, in the management mechanism of the country. The way forward is what we are looking at in this edition of The Insight. Meet our guest in some few seconds. May 1st, 2024, Cameroonians took to different ceremonial grounds across the country, parading from one end to the other, and later on feasting, wining, and dining, while many of them continue to work in poor, difficult, and precarious conditions across the country, while in other countries of the globe where working conditions are better, like in France, more than 200,000 persons were on the streets protesting, mounting pressure on their government for better working conditions. In Cameroon, Labor Day has been transformed into a day of feasting, wining, and dining. At the same time, the working conditions have been worsening over the years, and we're looking at these poor, difficult, and precarious conditions in which many Cameroonians are working today. And our guest is an economist and a politician, Moafo Gabriel. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, and welcome to today's edition of The Insight.
Thank you for coming to us all the way from the West Regional County, Bafoussam. How is Bafoussam now?
We can say everything is going on well insofar as Cameroonians keep on tightening their belts and watching, hoping for the better.
Right, and Bafoussam is one of the areas, or the West region as a whole, is one of the areas affected by the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, with some villages along the border with the northwest region that have had some attacks from alleged separatist fighters from the northwest region of the country, and there have been some kind of security threats along the border between Cameroon, or rather the west region, and the northwest.
Yes, you're not right. You're actually right to say Cameroon, talking of the west region, but you know, the west region is the actual capital of Cameroon, because it is through the west that we go to the north, to the south, to the northwest, to the southwest, to the east, and to all the 10 regions. Bafoussam is the central region of all these regions. Actually, the west region has been influenced and affected by everything that has happened, starting from Boko Haram, going towards the crisis of the east, and the crisis of the northwest and southwest. But the west region, being what it has been from the onset of the decolonization process in the Republic, which we know that the west region has done well and much for decolonization processes to take a turn and make Cameroon a republic with its sovereignty. The West region has been doing well.
The struggle for independence, the fight for independence, which became known as the Makiza War, with figures like Ernest Wanji, Umniobe, and all the rest.
Actually, the West region has been trying to create a one Cameroon that, upon the loss of Germany with the First World War, Cameroon was partitioned between France and England and administered separately and differently. and the West found itself being that particular area of tier that actually witnessed this loss of Germany to France and England, who were the Allied powers. Right now, Cameroon is going through a process and a difficulty which we call the Anglophone crisis, and the West has been taking a toll on it because the citizens of the Northwest and Southwest are all the citizens of the West region.
All right, now let's talk about the poor, difficult, and even precarious working conditions of many Cameroonians today. First, many of them were on the streets in different ceremonial grounds, parading, and later on continued with feasting, wining, and dining, while or in a context where working conditions are generally poor, difficult, and precarious for a greater proportion of the population. What's your analysis of this as an economist?
Well, right now what we can see about the working conditions in Cameroon, and particularly those, because we have the public sector and we have the private sector workers. The economy of Cameroon is made up of about 85% of the informal sector. 15% that makes the formal sector has only 5% of workers belonging to the state. The other remaining percentage that goes with workers who can declare themselves as partly parastatals goes a long way to say that all these workers all over the Republic of Cameroon have difficulties that they refuse to acknowledge because they don't know their rights as workers in a republic. They don't know their rights as citizens in a republic, because we cannot explain how citizens in other republics like France, in the same Labor Day, are there clamoring for more rights, while the same citizens in another republic, the Republic of Cameroon, are feasting, marrying, dining, drinking, and wining. This can only be explained psychologically, because economically, as citizens of the Republic of Cameroon, with the difficult working conditions, Cameroonians ought to be striking, not marrying, not rejoicing, not drinking, not whining, but actually striking, because it's of recent that we have witnessed the increments in prices of fuel and petroleum products. The removal of subsidies that were granted in this sector makes life difficult in all sectors of the Republic. But we see Cameroonians go outside buying beer, wine, marrying, drinking, and whining on a day that we were supposed to be fighting for increments in pay and better working conditions, like is the case in other normal working republics.
The reduction in fuel subsidy actually provoked a serious situation of inflation, with prices of basic commodities on the market and just everything increasing, and many Cameroonians are today groaning under the weight of increasing cost of living. But the issue here is, have they been denied their rights, or they don't know their rights at all?
They have not been denied their rights. The reality is they, Cameroonians, citizens, don't know their rights. That is a fact. And this fact is supported by the fact that we observe many graduates, people who have gone to school, who leave their countries to go abroad to work as slaves, modern slaves in modern times. This is not done in a normal republic. We are the ones to build this country. And when people decide to leave, abandon their roles as citizens, you cannot be talking about they being denied their rights. The President of the Republic of Cameroon, His Excellency President Paul Biya, has been speaking in all his messages to the youths. Let the youths dare. We are in an era of opportunities, and so on and so forth. But the youths choose to run away from the opportunities that are being presented to them. They choose to run away from their duties and their rights. And that is why the remaining ones choose to marry, feast, dine, and wine on a day where they were supposed to clamor for increments in salaries, facing the realities of the time, for better working conditions in all the offices, be it in the public and the private sector. That is the reality.
Now, in one of your write-ups, let me just read it out. You said the current government officials thought they were given at the time, that is at the time of the appointment, opportunities despite their inexperienced real nature, and have confiscated office in all areas and refusing, intimidating, and have deliberately forced the youths overseas, whether dead, alive, in bones or in flesh, without sympathy nor empathy, and was preparing their offsprings to come and recover the post they currently occupy. Tell us more about this.
The reality in Cameroon and in most African countries is that every tribe, every individual who favored the colonial masters were given advantages and privileges that were denied those who were open-eyed at the time, and that in reality now, those who are in office have chosen and have decided now deliberately, with the power given to them by the colonial masters who were supposed to have left and left the sovereignty to the people of the nation. But they have decided to connive with the former colonizers to take over and remain in the offices. You can name every country you want, from the North Pole to the South Pole, east to west of the African continent, where colonization actually took place. You will discover that you can name every nation you can choose of your choice. You would see that the colonial masters favor those who favored them and disfavored those who disfavored or disliked them.
The colonial masters are no longer there. We are now managing ourselves, disfavoring X and favoring Y.
Mr. Babila, you are not speaking in the right direction. You know the reality. The colonial masters have not left. You and I know we are speaking in English language.
They have not left. They have only changed color?
They have not only changed color, but they have put in place individuals who resemble us, but who don't work for us, who don't live for us, and who don't make the administrative machinery to work for us as was supposed to be in the normal sense of a decolonized and a sovereign state. We are still under colonization. We are not yet decolonized, Mr. Babila, from north to south, east to west of the African continent. And that is why in countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, and now Niger, and even coming after on the 6th of May, we shall see the case of Chad. Whether The population is matured enough to understand the realities of the time, and with the ongoing speeches, statements of national high-profile ranking officials as in the army and the politics of the former colonial and imperialist masters, France in particular, when they decide to say we have to recolonize Africa. We have to recolonize Africa. And that statement means nothing to a general in any republic in Africa. It is a problem. We are not yet decolonized. We have been given a picture of cake, but not the cake. We are not eating any cake. That is why Cameroonians are suffering. That is why they choose to marry instead of fighting for their rights, because in their heads they don't even know the truth of what is going on.
And the question is here is who is to be blamed? Shall we continue pointing accusing fingers outside the house, whereas we are managing the things from within?
Frankly speaking, I like truth and I speak truth, and I don't fear the consequences of speaking any truth, because as a free spirit and as an African, in reality, the truth is that most of these Cameroonian officials and officials all over the continent that have been ruling have been brought up, made by the imperialists who were blindfolding and lying to Africans that they were living, to make them back down and put down their weapons of fighting for a real sovereignty. We are not sovereign. In what are we sovereign? First, take the currency. When your wallet is being handled by a foreigner, by a non-official, by an individual who has been a thief to you, can you say that you have your financial autonomy? And when you don't have your financial autonomy, do we even speak the language that is ours? Today, Mr. Babila, you and I am Mwafo, you are Babila, we are speaking English. Are we British citizens? That is the reality.
You're talking about, and notably with regards to the currency, you're talking about the Franciere countries in particular, because
exactly.
we have some African countries like Nigeria, Zimbabwe and others. Ghana are not in this yoke.
Okay, take the case of Nigeria. What do they use? The Naira. Take the case of Zimbabwe. What do they use? Zimbabwean dollar. What is dollar in Africa if it is not dollar of America? Faked as dollar in Zimbabwe. Take the Naira. What is the value of Naira in reality? That is why most Nigerians at times prefer the CFA than the Naira. The CFA we have the CFA from the Central African Zone, and we have the CFA from the West African Zone, which we call in French, we have the franc ZOF, franc ZAF. That is what most Nigerians keep their currency in. But most Nigerian billionaires and well-to-do individuals who have worked hard, they pass through the Naira at least to breathe, but they don't survive through the Naira. That is why in recent times the Naira has had several difficulties, and you know even till now it is a floating currency. It is not stable. But take the case of most African countries that were under France with the CFA. Have you even seen the level of development as in the case of the English-speaking countries of Africa? The difference there lies in the fact that in the English-speaking zone of Africa, with the indirect rule system, they were able to bring, like you called Zimbabwe, that's their dollar. It is not naira. In Nigeria, you have the naira. In Kenya, you have different currency. But with African countries under France, all of them are using the CFA. Why? Because they had the direct rule system. And that is why I will still tell you, Labor Day cannot be celebrated otherwise than marrying, dining, feasting fakely in these countries, because they are not free. They don't know their rights and they cannot stand for their rights. And the few countries that have decided to stand for their rights, like the case of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger in particular, you see changes coming on. But with a case like Cameroon, I would take Cameroon as a case study. Cameroon actually falls in the circumstance of being used by the legacy of the First World War, where Germany had to fail and fall down weapons to France and England, who were the Allied powers. With this reality, France never colonized Cameroon. Cameroonians never had any treaty signed with French officials, nor with British officials. It is true that those of Victoria chose to bring in British, but the British chose Nigeria over Cameroon. So, actually, Cameroonians, with the Anglophone crisis, which I will extrapolate, are suffering tons of problems that come from the loss of Germany in the First World War. And yet, most of Cameroonians have refused to accept this reality. And we are diverting and getting into what actually led to the decolonization process in Cameroon, which we saw André Marimbida, the first vice president, Amadou Aejo, the first president, John Bufoncha, Paul Sopo-Priso, Michel Njine, and Jumesi, who came together noting that Cameroon was partitioned and divided, and that their future was already put in danger because of the loss of Germany in the First World War. That is where our problem actually lies. When the British came administering the 1/5 of Cameroon, while France was administering the 4/5 of Cameroon, on what basis was all that? First. Secondly, when that happened, why didn't they continue administering Cameroon with the German language? Why did they choose to bring in English and French in their specific regions of administration, and that the United Nations allowed them to go on?
They could not have been using the German language because the French would normally they couldn't administer in the German language, and the British also. But now the problems are there. What happened in history, what happened in time past happened, and we are where we are today. And the question is how to get out of where we are today, how to move forward from where we are today. No, but first of all, the issue of precarious working conditions of many Cameroonians today. What is the way out?
The way out at all instances are very clear. First, precarious and difficult working conditions for Cameroonians. Where does it come from? It comes from English, England, Anglo-Saxon, and Francophonie. Let me explain better. These are people who fought their war in Europe and came to Africa, extrapolating it, because the people at the time chose not to work with them, like the UPC, or like Andre Marimbida, they decided to bring in individuals who would favor them while working everything and killing every individual who was working against them. And this under the watchful eyes of the United States of America, who was the main protagonist in the United Nations organizations, who gave the mandates to the various parties that were administering Cameroon. The way out for the precarious working condition is, first, there must be a serious decolonization, a serious removal of the mandates that were given to Britain and France in Cameroon. Germany lost the war, not Cameroon. So, Britain and France have to back away from Cameroon, and Cameroonian officials in place, be they put by the British or the French, have to make sure that they recuperate and bring back the nationalism of Cameroon, as was the case, as was made by the founding fathers. The founding fathers knew where they came from and what the reality was. We never fought a war between Britain and France. We are not Germany.
So the national spirit is what you're talking about with regards to the way things are done, with regards to creating, for example, an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive, for jobs to be created, and all those things. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm actually saying is that the President of the Republic of Cameroon right now, Paul Biya, came to office because there was a national construction program put in place by the politicians at the time, who were Paul Sopoprizo, Michel Njumesi, Andre Marimbida, and Amadou Ahidjo. When Ahidjo was handing over power to Paul Biya, he did not check whether he was from the north, south, east, or west, or center region.
Things have to change in this country.
Yes.
These precarious working conditions have to change. These difficulties in which Cameroonians find themselves today have to change.
Yes. There must be a change in Cameroon. There must be a change in perspective. First, starting from the fact that France and Britain were not fighting their war against Cameroon, so they should not bring their war in Cameroon. There should be no Anglophone, Francophone crisis in the Republic of Cameroon. That is one. Because from there lies every problem of marginalization, lies all these problems of refusal to recognize the ongoing difficulties in the public and the private sectors in the Republic of Cameroon. Thirdly, the Republic of Cameroon doesn't have a currency of their own. You cannot function, never, no way, and forever without your currency. That is why the Bank of England is in charge of the economy of England. The Bank of France is in charge of the economy of France. The United States Federal Reserve is there for the United States of America. The ruble and the Central Bank of Russia is there for Russia. Every nation has and must have their currency and their national financial system
Managed locally.
managed locally.
All right, we're going to take a short break. Time for us to take a look at what the newspapers reported this week. And when we come back, we're talking about the struggle for change in Cameroon. The press review. The Horizon reports that after the successful tour of the southwest and northwest regions by the national chairman of the Social Democratic Front, Honorable O.C. Joshua, separatists have ordered his arrest in quotes. Another issue of the paper tells its readers that as Njirong and Tumbong conflict flares up, the Donga Mantum administration is accused of taking side with the aggressors. The Post reports a statement by the national chairman of the Social Democratic Front, Honorable O.C. Joshua, highlighting the ability of the Social Democratic Front to resolve the Anglophone crisis in 100 days after taking over the helm of the state. In another article, the paper says that the Secretary General of the Presidency of the Republic, Ferdinand Gongo, and other state personalities have been cited as witnesses for the family of murdered journalist Martinez Zogo. The Voice projects journalists of the Cameroon English-speaking Journalists Association, Douala chapter, as advocates of environmental change. The Minister of Communication, René Emmanuel Sadi, says the Guardian Post is the pride of journalism in Cameroon. Municipal updates underscores government's efforts to ensure that 59,163 pupils without birth certificates do not miss out on official examinations. On the front page of Newswatch, the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement (CPDM) calls corrupt mayors in the northwest region to order after indictment by the region's public independent conciliator. Ahead of the 2025 presidential election, Cameroon-born senior associate for Africa and regional director at the National Democratic Institute for International Affairs, Dr. Christopher Fomunyo, tells the Guardian Post that he is ready to use his expertise to push for change in his home country. As reported by The Sun, Elections Director General Eric Esuse insists Elecam must remain professional amidst calls for massive voters registration. Municipal Update says Northwest Governor Adolphe Lafrique used the 2024 Labour Day to crusade resilience in the face of security instability in his area of command. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We're still with our guest, Mafo Gabriel, is an economist and politician. Now we're talking about the struggle for change. There seems to be so many stumbling blocks to the process of change in Cameroon today. But he says that the situation is terrible and all Cameroonians need to be reminded that this country is ours and that all of us are owners of it, as enshrined in the Constitution. And you have said you said in one of your write-ups that we can rescue Cameroon from all potential dangers looming over the country. When you say that the situation is terrible, what exactly are you referring to?
I am talking about the youths who make up more than 70% of the total population of Africa and Cameroon. The situation is very difficult. If you can well remember, by the time Aiju was taking over as the president of the Republic of Cameroon, he was not our age. He did not have PhD. By the time President Paul Biya was taking over, he was not our age. He did not have PhD. Right now, what makes the problem? Why do we have more than 40% of our working population being forced? Going to Canada, going to the United States, going to Europe, going to China, going to all the countries that we assisted them to grow today. Why? The reality is this: Cameroonians are really fed up. The youths of Cameroon are actually fed up being given fake and false promises, knowledge of change. You are the youths, you are the leaders of tomorrow. When is that tomorrow? That tomorrow is now, and that tomorrow is 2025. There is no other tomorrow than 2025. Why? Cameroonians are in a situation where the system in place, actually, we cannot blame the system, but the system that has been putting the system in place needs to understand, and that system is the United Nations organization.
The system that has been putting the system in place?
Yes.
The system backing the system in place?
Yes.
What system is that?
Okay. Who put Aijo in power rather than Andre Marimbida in Cameroon? Who put in place Mobutu Sese Seko than Patrice Lumumba? Who put in place Blaise Compaoré instead of, you know the name, Thomas Sankara? Who has been putting in place Omar Bongo? Should I continue? Who has been putting in place all these systems? That today, who put in place Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukraine? That has been making things contrary to what Petro Poroshenko has put in place for Ukraine, that was not in war. The war that has created wars all over the continent and all over the planet. Who put them in place? Why is it that the United States of America was able and free to go and launch war against Iraq and nobody said anything? Who puts in place such systems? Why is it that the United States of America is not accountable for what they do wrong in the Arab states, in the Middle East, and in all the other parts of Africa? That's the same thing in Cameroon.
But these countries, especially referring to African countries, these are all sovereign countries that are carrying out elections, electing their leaders. In Cameroon, for example, elections have been going on, and President Paul Biya declared victory for the past 41 years or so. President Paul Biya declared victorious for the past 41 years or so.
Exactly. President Paul Biya has been winning elections. That is fact, right? But let me tell you, the true facts is that the United Nations and their allies decide who truly wins an election and who fails an election. I, as an economist and a politician, I demand that all the United Nations programs, organizations and officials back off from Africa. Let them remove their hands from the affairs of Africa. Once they do that, why is it that in other countries they choose to accept a military takeover and the other countries they don't accept? Why is it that they allow France to control our economy in the domain of finance with the CFA, while in France it is not Cameroonians who dictate what the euro is about? Why should they allow the French Republic choose for more than 14 African countries their currency when they have their pound sterling?
So what is blocking the change that we are talking about now? What is blocking the change in Cameroon, for example? Why can't we stand up and say, okay, it is over, this is what we want. We want a change of the system, we want a change of this, we want, like some of the young people who spoke to us here in Douala last week and even this week, were really expressing burning desire for change, a burning desire for change. But what is blocking that change?
The first thing that is blocking the change is fear. Fear on the part of most Cameroonians at home and those who have run and gone abroad to be modern slaves, which I don't say with joy, but I know that they run because the situation is so precarious that they cannot stand it. We are not of equal strength. We are all Cameroonians, but not of equal strength. The fear they have to bring change, like Ousmane Sonko, Diomaye Faye, Ibrahim Traore, all these are people who know the difficulties and the precarious situations that their countries follow and go through, but yet stood their grounds to bring the change. We can see right now in Chad, we have Masra Success and Mahamat Debi, who are struggling to bring their country towards a positive growth. In Cameroon, what can we say about Cameroon if it is not fear? What is the situation with Cameroon? But mind you, everything is already on track to make sure that we shall have a serious change of what is going on. What has been going on will stop. Believe me, Mr. Babila, believe me, all Cameroonians, everything is going to take a different dimension, because right now the youths who make up more than 75% of the population of Cameroon are decided and have made their decision. We are the most intelligent of Africa. Nobody can despise that. That's why we even have the appellation the continent, because we represent every nook and corner of the continent of Africa. So we are going to make sure that those blockages are removed at the appropriate time, and that appropriate time is the upcoming presidential elections in the Republic of Cameroon. The United Nations will not have their programs running again in this republic. The United States of America, France, Britain, Germany, and the European nation, the European Union in particular, have to make sure that they align themselves with the realities of the time. We don't want any form of colonization again. That is the only thing that will remove the precarious working conditions. Do you know that all these movements to Canada, United States, and Europe has been pre-programmed and made to happen by these various nations, knowing that they will have a decline in their labor force in the future, which that future is now? They programmed it to be now, and it is another form of modern slavery, which they don't take again by tying chains on the necks of Africans, but making them to see as if there are better working conditions in their countries than in our countries, because they have put in place systems that will work for more than 50 years, making sure that we don't have joy working as Cameroonians. But those of us who have stayed here, knowing the realities, will make sure that the future generation don't go struggling for jobs and better working conditions, which are lies.
Dying in the desert, dying in the Mediterranean,
You can call
struggling
those.
for greener pastures.
You can say all that. If you don't die in the desert, you don't die in the Mediterranean, but you come from a poor and wretched home where you raise 4 million CFA, 5 million CFA, to deport yourself by yourself as a modern slave unknowingly. I mean unknowingly. That is why I was talking from the onset about lack of knowledge. Even the Bible says, my people perish because of the lack of knowledge. The people who are moving from Africa in Cameroon to abroad, they don't know that they are modern slaves being taken as hostages by their own will. How much can they repatriate home? Who blocks that they shouldn't have double or dual nationality? It is still the same people who promise them better heavens there, making them to dream about such places while the resources are coming from Africa. They take 10,000, they remove 500 francs, give your government, remove 600 francs, give you, that is 1,100, remove 1,100 from 10,000. That is the gain they have.
I was talking earlier this week with a Cameroonian civil society leader and writer who is in the south of Cyprus, Lapana Tashamama, and he said that Cyprus is a small country compared to Cameroon. Cyprus has nothing in terms of natural resources compared to Cameroon and many other African countries, but it is much more developed, much more advanced than Cameroon, and offering better opportunities than Cameroon. And this is what is attracting many young people who are striving by hook or by crook to get out there.
My fellow citizen, let me tell you the fact. Cameroonians who go abroad, they don't do that conscious of the reality of nationalism. They go because they are fed up and they refuse to commit suicide. In Europe, those who are fed up commit suicide. In America, those who are fed up commit suicide and go mad. Those are the options. But in Cameroon and Africa in general, those who are fed up take the road towards the desert, the Mediterranean, and what you can see. The reality is that the case of Cyprus and so on, it is the same allied powers, the same modern world that makes it possible for Africans to see that life is better there, because we are and were meant to be slaves. We are and were meant to be slaves. That is why we are treated as such.
That is the perception that is given as far as Africans are concerned, but which is not the truth. Africans were not meant to be slaves.
But the slave masters have decided that we have to remain slaves. That's why French generals and officials think they should come back and recolonize Africa, because Burkina Faso and Mali are rising so strong and can open eyes to other countries.
All right, let's take some interviews and we'll be right back in a moment. Interviews of the week.
We are looking forward to continuing to strengthen our collaboration, our unity, our loyalty, and our patriotism, and not only towards the nation, but towards our own area, to see how we can cause our children who are elites to participate more in local development, because we are quite enclave.
Our focus has been mostly on farm to market routes. We have been having a lot of problems, and today we have come to really see how we can resolve some of these problems and to see how Bamambo will grow.
Since 2016, we've not been meeting. We met today to put up a few things concerning our fondom, concerning our chiefdoms, concerning the thought of the deal of Wabana that will be going out this month. Arrange our palaces and stay there, because since 2016, the crisis that have been hitting the northwest and southwest region hit us and we're out of the village. But thank God, places are calm now, we are back.
We are here because our cash crops, cocoa, palm trees and other goods have been destroyed. We have been working on this farmland for over 50 years. From nowhere, an individual claims ownership over the land. We have asked him to show us a portion of the land where his parents had worked before.
The first thing to do, I would like to put an injunction order there for all activity to stop.
We need our salary because they are paying us. You see, there is nowhere. We rent houses here. You will hear that you need to pay a house from the maybe 5th to 30th. But salaries, they are coming from 12 right to 30th. So we don't understand why. Even now that we are talking like this, we have not yet take our money that we have worked for. Because you don't even have no good medical care. You go to work even on Sundays. On Sundays we go to work. Even now we have somebody now in the hospital and the person is hospitalized, paralyzed. Now that we are talking like this, he's in the hospital. So if you see all this, it means that we are just working because we need to work. Now even our salaries are blocked because they know that we are trying to ask for something. You come to realize that even to buy the fish that you are working, you cannot be inside the water and soap enter your eyes. To buy 1 kilo of fish here, they will condition you.
There's this issue of areas of salary which is really disturbing us. If a worker has a problem, if they are not paying well, if they are not paying hours of work, if generally conditions of work, that constructive dialogue comes in to solve.
Even if we still observe that in the north, we still have problems with the Benue and Mayore division, because we still observe pocket of resistance in these two divisions. And we took necessary measures to make sure that the security situation prevailing improvement on the field should be consolidated, as we have noticed that since the beginning of this year. The security meeting that I shared this morning is part of the Operation Adano. To date, I can say that the result of this important operation are encouraging, because the phenomenon of highway robbers is under control. Lipstick theft are under control. The phenomenon of kidnappings with request of ransom is globally also on control.
You're welcome back, Mafo Gabriel. You heard one of the fishermen at the Douala fishing port in Yupo Douala 2 subdivision saying that you cannot be inside the water and you're unable to wash your eyes.
That's the reality for most African countries, and I really thank God for the case in Mali and the case in Burkina Faso, where they have chosen to use their waters and wash their eyes and not allow soap enter their eyes while they are using their waters. That is what Cameroonians, and particularly those in Douala and all other areas where there exist fishing grounds, not only fishing grounds, oil mines, petroleum deposits, gold deposits, forest, land and manure land areas, they should be able to use their resources naturally and very well. And Cameroonians, as a sovereign state, must find the natural water of their currency and their national language to make sure that soap don't enter and close their eyes again.
And the question is how to get there in 2025, as you said, how to get to that change, how to turn the tide and make sure that Cameroonians are able to use their water to wash their faces, to wash their eyes, and not perish, whereas they have the solution.
Well, I go back to what His Excellency the President of the Republic of Cameroon told Cameroonians since 2012, and particularly the youths. We, the youths, have to innovate, says President Paul Biya. We have to dare, and we have to create. So I propose to Cameroonians.
All right. So the President of the Republic talked about innovating, creating,
and daring.
But how can the young people to whom these words were addressed go about creating, innovating, and more importantly, daring in the current context, where you raise your head, you're either crushed or neutralized in one way or the other. You're brutalized, and many young people today do not want to be brutalized, do not want to face the storm.
The head of state, President Paul Biya, is a head of armed forces. He is the national president of the CPDM. He is the president of the Republic of Cameroon, guarantor of the Constitution of the Republic of Cameroon. If he is the one who tells us youths to dare, and being the head of state and head of armed forces, I dare you believe me, he would have nothing against any youth. And he has always said, transition in the Republic of Cameroon will come through the ballot box. Those are his words. And he's a man of his words and honor. When he says you should dare, Mr. Babila, he's not talking about an individual, but he's talking to the African youths who have to dare to bring out the decolonization in the way it was supposed to be. André Marimbida was the first to refuse from the French government to bring down war on the UPCists. André Marimbida is from the center, south, and east. Take it that way. When President Paul Biya says we should dare, I still say he is there for us and not against us. Youth should fear not daring. Youth should fear not creating a national language, harmonizing the languages of the Republic of Cameroon to bring away all the Anglophone and Francophone problems that might have or have been or would ever exist.
Now, is that the conviction? Is that the driving force behind your decision to dare in 2025 to put your candidacy to the post of President of the Republic of Cameroon?
Right now, 2025 is still many months ahead of us. Putting my candidacy right now, I cannot say I'm choosing any political party to do such as a platform, but I would call on all Cameroonians to follow me in the daring process, in the innovation process, and in the creation process of a new Republic of Cameroon. Not the one where there is fear, but the one where we speak one language, because we are programming to harmonize all the languages and cultures of Cameroon from all the villages to make sure that we don't have tribalism again. We are daring to create a currency for the Republic of Cameroon, be it under which political formation, but we are prepared for that. And next, we are preparing to innovate and moving from a system where we have 8 hours of work dictated to us by people who don't know our realities and our situation, where we are going to have a 24 hours economy functioning 24/7.
Right. So what I get from that is you're ready to face the storm, to face the violent waves, to face, let me not say police brutality, to fight for that change.
I will still repeat, the head of state, the national president of the CPDM, is the head of the armed forces and police. He would not ask us to dare to be crushed by his same forces, where he's commander-in-chief. I would rather call on all Cameroonians to believe in our father, who is the head of state, to bring this nation to another level, just as was the case in 1982, when President Ahidjo handed over to him voluntarily, free-willingly, and without any crush and daring of police, gendarme, or armed forces at the time.
That was the constitution that was being applied.
Exactly. Which in this case now, we have seen Diomaye Faye, Ousmane Sonko, and many others who are youths of our age taking over the helm of their countries with confidence from the armed forces, police, gendarme, the constitutional corps, the politicians, and the population. Why not in Cameroon? We can do the same, provided we are building the nation. We need to build the nation, and we are calling on the whole citizens and populations, including the armed forces, the police and the gendarmerie, and all the other elites at home and abroad, to assist us and all well-wishers who can do, to bring this nation to a situation where we really enjoy living in the land of promise, in the land of glory, in the Republic of Cameroon as it is.
Right. Some political and civil society leaders, Kabanwala is the national president of the Cameroon People's Party, the CPP, a member of Stand Up for Cameroon, civil society leader, executive director of the network of human rights defenders in Central Africa, Redac Maximilian Gombe, think that what you're saying now would hardly happen in the present context if the system is not changed, if the Anglophone crisis is not solved. To them, these are the priorities: changing the system through a political transition, solving the Anglophone crisis before whatever change we're talking about, before the ongoing registration of potential voters, which is going on, and presented as the miracle bullet that could bring about that change. What do you think about that?
I would like Cameroonians to know that when President Ahidjo decided to bring over all the political leaders at the time to create the CNU, which President Paul Biya chose to transform it into the CPDM with all its institutions and property. That was because of national construction. It was never as rivalry or destruction or excludability. So people like Edith and all the other people who have existed, being called opposition leaders, have only moved according to the waves of their time. But the time now is a time of national construction. with different perspective, which I call on all Cameroonians to follow, to move it, and to make it, because the change is already there and we have to do it. We can do it and we have to do so. The opposition parties in the Republic of Cameroon have proven to us that they are not in any way opposing any system or any reality, but opposing the way of distribution of the national cake, and which, when it favors them, they become members of the ruling party par ricochet, and when it disfavors them, they become radicalists. So there is no actual opposition in the Republic of Cameroon. Everybody is of the ruling party. Everybody is of the Cameroon National Congress, the CNU, which is called the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement. And I call on the youths, the working, the armed forces, and every other individual to think of the future and rebuild this nation with the lackings that have come with multi-partisan politics and opposition existence in the Republic of Cameroon.
Right. I take two things from what you just said now. The change is here. We can make it happen. Right. Mofu Gabriel, economist and politician, thank you for coming.
I am more grateful, and I thank you all for listening and following up. And I really call on you all above 20 years of age to register massively on the electoral list and partake in the upcoming presidential elections, municipal, legislative, as they come to appear. Let all Cameroonians learn and accept and free willingly exercise their rights.
Right, thank you so much, Mofu Gabriel. Thank you for your time. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today's edition of The Inside. You can follow the program on our social media platforms, Facebook and YouTube. You can also follow the rebroadcast of the program on Friday at 5 p.m. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.